we have this perfect geographical representation of the Middle East and this lovely handwriting. I'm not sure who did it, but so we have three core chunks in the book of Ezekiel. So the first 11 chapters are accusations against Israel. Then there's judgment, and then there's hope. And just for context again, remember there's several core covenants that animate the scriptures. God made these eternal promises to Abraham and his posterity. He brought the people to Mount Sinai and then asked them to be loyal to him by revealing the Ten Commandments and the law of Moses. And they had all these generations where they could practice loyalty and covenantal faithfulness. And what we see is Ezekiel spends quite a bit of time in that covenantal context using interesting symbols to talk about how the people consistently failed to be covenantally loyal and faithful to God. And that's one of the things we can take in our day is how can we learn from the people in the past? How can we learn when they did things right? How can we learn from what they did that was wrong and hopefully repeat the good and not repeat the bad?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit of the background of the history now in Ezekiel. So some of this history is already set up in the discussion of Jeremiah. Jeremiah and Ezekiel are rough contemporaries. Ezekiel's probably a little bit younger than Jeremiah, but it's setting up in the context with the book of Jeremiah and Ezekiel are both in the context of the Neo-Babylonian armies coming and taking control of Judea. So one of the things that is specific for Ezekiel, if we open to chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, it's the introduction. Now it came to pass in the 30th year, and in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river Chebar, that the heavens opened, and I saw the visions of God. And in the 5th day of the month, which is the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity, the word of the Lord came unto Ezekiel. So what do we know about Jehoiachin? Jehoiachin is the son of Jehoiakim, which you would have heard about in terms of Jeremiah. And he is the one that when the Babylonians come and they're going to lay siege to Jerusalem in about 597, 598, he's going to be the king and he's going to be taken away with some of the upper class peoples, and they're going to be taken to Babylon. And so it's during his the 5th year of his reign of his time in captivity that Ezekiel is going to start having his experiences, and that he's going to be talking about in this book. All right, so if we're looking here in terms of the Levant, they're in Jerusalem. This is where Jehoiachin is reigning. Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, is going to come down through a series of battles here, and is going to come to a point here where they're going to lay siege to Jerusalem, and that's the beginning of the book of Ezekiel. One of the things I think with this outline here to understand is that chapters 1 through 32 are all happening pre-Jerusalem's destruction by the Babylonians, and then 33 and down is talking about roughly the 16 years that are after the destruction of Jerusalem in 586.
When we talk about the fall of Jerusalem, it can be a little confusing because we think it's just a single event, and it turns out it's a process over time. So Ezekiel is among the first captives around 597, 598, where the Babylonians are not appreciating the rebelliousness of Jerusalem. They want the people here paying their tribute and taxes to Babylon. And the people here don't like paying money to foreign rulers. So the Babylonians come in and they depopulate a portion of Jerusalem with like the upper class, the many priests, the king. But they put on the throne a puppet king, and they continue to rebel. And so that's when Babylon comes in and says, okay, we're just done with you guys, and we are going to destroy the city, which has the temple, the palace, and the homes of all the rich. Like, these are all the foundations for people's source of wanting to rebel. So when we talk about the fall of Jerusalem, we're really talking about 587, 586, even though 10 years before, and even a little earlier, Babylon has already been impacting and depopulating Jerusalem. So it's a process over time.
So although this history overlaps between Jeremiah and Ezekiel, the major difference is that Jeremiah is a prophet in Judea, and he's there experiencing all of these things that are going on. Ezekiel, however, is called to be a prophet to the captives who are already in Babylon. And so he's warning them about what's going to happen in Jerusalem, even though it hadn't happened as the book opens.
So just for those of you who are more familiar with the Book of Mormon, this is absolutely a critical history point, because keep in mind, Lehi is preaching in Jerusalem during the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah. So Nephi, Lehi, Laman, Lemuel, Sam, they know this history very well. They are living it, and they're about to leave, probably either shortly after or right around the same time that Ezekiel was carried away to the north. They're going to head to the south, and you get this split. Just so we see this cross section over to the Book of Mormon.
We also can see that Zedekiah is Jehoiachin's uncle, right? So that's the relationship between them.
Yeah, and again, he's a puppet ruler. He's put there by the Babylonians to say, you are going to be loyal to us. And it turns out he then tried to make an alliance with Egypt, and that didn't go so well for him.
It's also kind of interesting, the Babylonian records that we have indicate they saw Jehoiachin as the legitimate king. All the way till 569 BC on Babylonian records, Jehoiachin and his family are taken care of by the Babylonian king. They eat at his table. And even Ezekiel talks about Zedekiah as kind of a regent prince, never really calls him the king. And so it's fascinating to see these different perspectives. So you have Jeremiah as a prophet in Jerusalem, Ezekiel as a prophet in Babylon. You have Lehi and Nephi, who are prophets in the south, but now heading over to the New World. So it's fascinating that we get these three different perspectives of this massive, pivotal event in Israelite history.